is very, very low in this video, so I'm going to, I don't know how short I will keep this, but I just wanted to kind of say hello to everybody and say it's a Friday night tonight, and again, I apologize for the crackling noises. It's just my feet as they make contact with the wooden floor. Pretty old floors. It was renovated again, and well, short story long is this the prior renter, yeah, well, he demolished the whole place, disemboweled everything, and they had to kind of refurbish everything and create a new layer of wood because everything was broken, and it was a pretty crazy situation. I don't know. Actually, you get to the point of demolishing things to such a point where you actually have to get the police involved. So this is what happened before. But anywho, just wanted to kind of talk about concepts. I think the concept that just kind of entered my mind is music. Now, I get very irritated, and especially how the music scene is convoluted. Is if you look at, say, metal. Now, the concept I really like about music, now to me, music is important because it's a way of solace, it's a way of getting out, a way of introspection, even, in a way. And it's to me a way away from sexuality. Now, I've grown very, I would just say, attested, or I've grown very very my view on sex has grown to the point where it became very tilted. I started to really view it as almost a way of human ingratuity, as a way of glamorizing something. I view sex these days as something that is, it's a pestilence. It's something that's part of the pestilence of the human mind. It's not something that to me is something of a sacred form. I'm sorry, but somebody who's gone through a whole rite of passage of seeing the other side of the tunnel and such, where everything has just to me been a bombshell of rejections, loneliness, and despair in the end. And I think I really can't. I sometimes you look at young people and I think by myself, like, how is it possible that in youth people can find love and sex and affection? And so many of us, I mean, are actually described as perpetual celibates, who are lonely forever in our lives. Like even older men of 60, you'd find in today's generations and I'm pretty sure that's going to be the future for us. Like if you look into the crystal ball, the future would be a loneliness survivor of somebody who's just a shell of once being lonely person or once being lonely youth. And I think this is just going to be ultimate in for us. Is I did make a mention in a very past video, distant video, where I talked about how men like us or people like us would eventually become completely enclosed when we join, retirement, and when we become eventually, like, what's going to happen of us? We're going to become fossils. We're going to become fossils of lonely transients who eventually will dwell in as ghosts in retirement villages. We wouldn't have anybody else. All our loved ones will be deceased by then. I mean, this is truly something I think I fear, is how I will grow old and I would realize eventually the fate for me would just be I would enter into a massive old age home and retirement village. If I live that long, or I let myself live that long, I would eventually, that will be my inevitable fate. I will be coupled off with other old people who are more successful than I am, to the point where they have grandchildren, they have spouses, significant others, grandchildren. It would come and visit them. It would take them away from the slumber of, the infantile retirement village. And I mean, I wouldn't have that, unfortunately. Like for me, I would be a lonely, crowded person with the idea of a pair bond is just me, myself, and I, if there's a tri-pair bond. But the joke is on me again. So I realize, like, for instance, now I'm Friday night, let's say just as a young man, quote unquote young, in brackets, I'm as a man, like, living in myself, like 32 years old, in my own cottage, talking to myself, basically making a YouTube video. There's nobody really else. So there's another girl I kind of see here and there, but it's more the friendship. It's not really something. It's not even a platonic relationship. It's just a girl I see, young women I see, now and then. It's just friendships. Like we've made it very, very clear we're just friends. But a very pressing point I wanted to make is there's a couple of things I actually want to touch upon. It's mainly, again, being lonely, and the other thing is about music. Now, music is quite an interesting thing. Like for me, I listen to music to get away from the way the world works, right? And I found that what's very grim to me is that I tend to gravitate toward very extreme forms of metal music, not least because these metal music are actually it almost it denies sex to the point where it vulturizes it, if you know what I mean. Like it it completely eliminates the form that sex is even on the table. What I hate about many mainstream music is it's all about love. Like, the undercurrent of love, sex, and rock and roll is always there in rock or any type of modern music. Like, even if it's pop, Britney Spears, whatever you want to quote. But it's almost like there's this renowned rebound effect of love and lust and sex and affection that's okay and that's actually ought to be. Whereas in metal, in some themes of extreme metal, it's something that's almost like I just mentioned before. It's something that is seen as capricious, as malicious. It's something that's seen as unhumane in the form. It's almost like a taboo subject in metal. Sex is something that's it's something that wants to. It's almost for perpetual celibate. Some forms of metal, where that form of metal will almost lobotomize sex, completely to the form where it almost asks the question, why would we even give in to a human, to a human preconditioning? Why don't just deny it? Why not deny everything human to that point? And I do think that can be very dangerous. Like I think metal can be dangerous to the point where we deny everything human, to the point where we can even deny empathy. Because I know that some forms of metal, especially black metal, now I wouldn't go that far, but death metal I would listen to, but I do think black metal, the thing I hate the most is the imagery and the psychopathy of it sometimes. But what I do adhere to some forms of it, if there's some forms of black metal where I feel the artists deny sex, but they don't get to the point where they really are in gore. They still keep empathy. Like, you can still see they are good people. I'm talking about 20% of black metal that I really enjoy listening to, because I can see it's just because of pain of suffering that someone would make metal. That's like screaming and cursing and sometimes even anger at God. It's not really because these people want to. It's not just because these people are really just sick in the mind. Um, Now I want to kind of go on that tariff and saying that, to me, I enjoy it when I can listen to music that's just hateful about sex, that says, we need to do away with it. We need to deny it to the point where it's almost becoming aesthetic. And to me, some part of death and black metal even, or extreme metal, touches onto that point where it wants to deny sex, because it has the view that sex, like women with big boobs in front of, it's a covers of modern music. It denies that. This is kind of what I like in metal. What metal does, what no other genre does, it denies sex, especially the extreme forms of metal. That I find a lot of sympathy with this form of metal. Of course, not the other, because I know that some forms of metal are extremely to the point where they're less egalitarian and they're much more conservative, to the point where it's almost extreme conservation. So like you get the Nazi metal with black metal. They are very Nazi. They hate black people and stuff like that. And I don't really know their spiel, but you get a very hateful vibe with them. They're not just anti-sexual; they're also extremely against any human element, which is dangerous, right? Because we as humans, I don't really know how far we should go. And that's kind of the question to me, is when you have someone that's hurt, you get metal music. Metal music to me is an ombrus of people with pain. People who try to get rid, who try to get justice for their pain. People who try to get some form of liberty for their pain. And I may be one of these people. For me, the hurt and pain of a never loving, somebody who could never really find a wife, somebody who could never really find the happiness in a life that they really wanted. To me, metal music sets it free. It sets the inner demon free that wanted to roam free. It gives the torch to somebody who has been an imbecile throughout their lives, for instance. Metal music gives hope to somebody who's been in despair, who's been hurt, who's been injured. Metal music gives it's almost like black magic to an infested mind. It's sometimes a dangerous thing, but sometimes you want revenge, and music is kind of the way of getting back at the world in a way. And I think metal can be dangerous in that sense, but I wanted to kind of use metal as a symbolism to show that I do respect it about metal music in solitaire to other music forms, because metal in particularly denounce sex. I found that in extreme forms of metal, if you go very extreme to the form of almost hate forms of metal, they denounce sex. They say sex is a pestilence, which I do enjoy about it, because in that form, I also feel very angry at sex. I hate, I hate the sexual halo that we as humans wear every day. Like, yeah, we are getting horny. Oh yeah, and then everything that's going about it to me is also weird. Like, even in the conditioning that you see in offices, for instance, if there's a woman entering, everybody's just kind of fluctuating towards her, that typical male tirade of, the fact that all the males are kind of competing for the one woman. That I kind of hate it. I wish there was a way that we can renounce that to the point where we are revoking it completely. And it's kind of what metal is doing. Metal takes takes the whole halo effect and cast it away to hell and say, we want to be part of we want to be part of denouncing this completely. We don't want to be part of sex. We don't want to. We see it as the human dirt factor. This is kind of what I really enjoy about metal, especially extreme death metal and extreme metal and really technical thrash metal and stuff. Is they're not only gory, but this is kind of the nice thing about it: gothic and goreness. Now, gothic again is another thing. Gothic is very sexual, right? Black death and thrash metal, not sexual at all. It denounces sex, right? So if you're someone who's angry at sex and stuff, this is probably the type of music, and this is kind of dangerous because this is what you get with the incel community, right? They go through, the incels are growing pretty conservative. They're growing right-wing conservative to a very extreme point of fascism. So these people are dangerous in that sense. I'm not saying you should kind of take that mantle, but I'm saying what I do revere and what I do enjoy listening to very extreme forms of metal is not the hate to religion or not the hate to a party. It's the fact that they denounce the human element of sex, to me, that makes it attractive. And I don't really know how to balance it because the more extreme you go, the more hateful music you listen to. It's not good for us, right? But I want to just be hateful about this one thing. I just want to be hateful about sex itself. Like, I want a genre that completely revoke sex in their worldview, whether it be aesthetic, whether it be I don't call for a misanthropic label. I call for an anti-sexual label, and I don't really know where to find it in music per se, because I try to look, and all I find is the only marker that you can find in anti-sexual music genre is a marker that is aimed to misanthropy. But that's not completely what I'm going to go for, or in misology even. But that's not completely what I want. I don't really know how to kind of balance the scales here, because in one way, what I really hate is always listening to music, especially the symphonic metal, and always hearing high-pitched female voices. It's almost like infantilizing you to the sexual side. I do like the gothic scenery about it, but in a way I feel, for people like us who've fallen from grace in sense of getting sex or having a girlfriend, getting the right one, so to speak. I'm not just talking about having sex and stuff, but for people like us who find that we fell from heaven and such, it's difficult to kind of conservatize yourself with a sexual realm in a world that's completely imprised with sex. It's really difficult. I mean, for someone who's never been able to be subjected to that, it is truly difficult. I kind of understand why average people, average Joes, just don't get it. Because in one way I can understand their frustration, their plight with people like us, that they just say we have to kind of get over it and live with ourselves. But at another end, like, everybody, and that's kind of a law I've learned, I can't remember which book, but everybody in a way want to hail themselves a hero in the end. Like, nobody is just okay with living as a loser, and people in one way want to find justice. I think that is the one major goalpost for every human being, is to somehow find a form of justice in their life where they can settle and think they've done the best for themselves, where they can find some sort of way of seeing their fear, their suffering, their grievousness to the world, like even if it is to a very extreme form. This is kind of the danger again of keeping people in mute form, keeping people quiet in idle mode. Is if people can't speak up, they become angry, they throw rocks at you, right? It is one thing. It is how people become. They start stoning, they start throwing rocks. And I think this is a way. I'm not necessarily calling myself a victim in this case, but maybe I am one. Maybe that's what I want to do, configuratively speaking, in that sense. It's like I want to throw a rock at something. I want to just get it out. I'm just angry sometimes. I'm just angry at the way that the world works. I'm just angry at the human element that we miss somehow. We can't get because we're robbed from it. And I just don't understand it. I don't understand this dog pill thing that some human would rather fuck, or I'm not going to use that word, but rather basically it's sick. But I've read these last days that some women even keep dogs to kind of do crazy stuff with them because, or even keep them almost as their alpha male. I'm not even going to go as deep as that. But I've seen a video about it, quite sickening to be honest. But it just gets to me that what's going on in the world is truly sickening. And sex to me is a vulture act these days. Like, I don't view it as a clean act. I don't view it as just a companionship between a man and a woman anymore. To me, it is an act of animalism. It is an act of complete carnivorism, almost. Like, if you look at the extremes of it, you see the extreme alpha male, being the carnivore he is, have sex with a beautiful freaking, Princess Joan, or whatever her name is. It to me is an act of inner animalism. It's an act of primitivism, of fossilism. It's not an act of beauty. It's not the evolution of man to me. Sex is to me the meriting of man in a way. I find it very hard to look at the act of sex and really value it as the human element itself. I find it, I find it kind of unique in a way that people want to find sex and they see themselves as if they, as an evolved human being, but they see sex as almost like the cherry on the cake to being human. Whereas for me, I think the denial of sex is to be the ultimate human. Is to me to me to be the ultimate ascetic is to be the ultimate human. To me, denying the elements of greed and lust. And I'm not talking about food. Could be going as far as denying even the ability to want to eat certain foods. But I'm saying, like, gluttony could be denied to the point where, but gluttony is sexual as well. So we're not talking about denying the ability to take in food or water. We're talking here about gluttony. And to me, sex is gluttony. It's a form of gluttony. It's no other than that. It's a form of gastronomy. Physical or bodily gastronomy. This is what sex is to me. And to me, it's part of the greed factor of this world. And I hate it. I hate how you kind of jump from romanticism to sex in one beat. And you kind of lose something in between. And this is kind of what you get with food programs. Everything becomes so fucking sexualized. Everything from the 60s, it became so freaking imbued in sexual, everything is just, oh yeah, don't do another Freudian slip. Another Freudian slip, another penis on the, think about a pen. The whole thing about Freud and dreams and stuff, like, that's quite interesting. Is think about anything round, you think about a woman's, basically genital parts. Think about anything that is a pinpoint. You think about a male genital part, right? The Freudian slip, the infamous Freudian slip everybody talks about. Like, it's quite peculiar because it's truly what it is today. Everybody just throws in a bit of a sexual innuendo over the year and there. Like, it didn't used to be the old times. I mean, sex was quite treasurable. Today, I just think it's a dirty thing. It's probably just because of my experience that I just don't view sex as this elevation of humankind. I don't view it as the upper ego to become human. I view it as the bottom dweller of hell, of one of the massive circles. That's how I view sex, and I always will probably view it. I view it as a dirty cloth rather than a clean blanket. Like, it's always been the case for me. Is I just viewed it as that, and it could be particular to my psyche being ego, super ego, whatever. But yeah, I just wanted to kind of mention that I don't particularly enjoy seeing how music takes this left turn into the sexual domain. And look, I can understand from the 1980s, 70s, and such. Like, I do enjoy listening to this because I do enjoy listening to poppy songs about sex and, about love and romance. But not even this is sex. But to me, I hate when sex gets overflowered into metal. I hate when symphonic metal takes such a sexual theme that you always see women. You have this beautiful music, but then women overpower it. Women with their high-pitched voices overpower it. And men with their deep freaking voices. I've always listened, or I always prefer listening to music that breaks the ice when it comes to becoming just yourself, becoming an introspective human, trying to search for meaning in life without having the ascertainment for, sexual pleasure or anything like that, infatuation or lust. I always kind of really enjoyed it when music could take the turn into a solitary pursuit rather than a companionship of sorts, and I truly don't listen to music, and I don't often listen to music that has the undertone of companionship with another human being, because I feel ultimately, to me, when I listen to music, it should be to get free from suffering. And to me, suffering is sex. To me, suffering is gluttony. To me, suffering is overindulging. I don't want to listen to music that is about those things I suffer from in the first place. So that was kind of an anticlimax to me in the beginning, because I don't seem to be gravitating to those forms. As a kid, that's the thing about kids. We're indoctrinated in a way. Like we listen to the 90s and 80s music that is all about love and this, oh romance, oh you kiss me on the lips and such. But when we become older and we become embittered by the world, we want to listen to music that can soothe us, right? We don't want to have things. And this is, to me, why I think that the psychology behind people going through to extreme forms of music like black metal or death metal is because these people become completely unsatisfied and disgruntled and despondent at the world. They decry the world. They become angry at the way the world becomes. They become like, they become scolded. They feel scolded. They feel embittered. They feel denounced by the world in a way that they feel they want to find their form of meaning. And that form of meaning is a small corner in a massive, massive room. But it's a small corner that they can go and turn to and kind of turn their back toward, face their freaking face towards the small corner and just start to kind of crumble inside and just be. And this to me is kind of what, as dirty as these forms of music sound, they do sound dirty, gory, bleak sometimes to people, and bloody. But sometimes this is a cover-up for people in pain, Sometimes this is the only thing that can soothe the soul. Sometimes the thorns are actually that which can stroke the soul of a pain person. This is an important part. And this is to me what I see in metal music. As gory and as evil and as demonic as they might seem. Underneath it, there's a suffering person. Underneath it, there's somebody who wants to find some sort of meaning or justice. They're just finding a way out of anger. Whatever that might be. Whether it's burning something down in a music video, maybe that's just a form of release for that person. Because they feel so embittered by this world. They feel so completely incarcerated by everything around them. They feel incarcerated by an R-rated existence. And they feel that they have to do these things to prove in some sort of manner that they can also act in power. And I think this is kind of the important thing, that these people think, and I think I want to kind of conjoin this recording with not least the psychology of why people listen to extreme forms of metal, albeit evil, and admit the fact that this metal music might be a bit extreme or maybe unmodest to a lot of people. Like, I'm not really talking about it. What I'm trying to say is that there's a psychology or an anthropology about the fact that people listen to this music as such as they conjoin with the inner psyche of suffering. Because suffering is actually what explains our actions in many ways. I mean, we are an enactment of trying to regress suffering to the point where we experience or we renounce pain, pleasure again in support of less pain, right? Fewer pain points to the point of greater efficacy with pleasure. This is actually what the human mind wants. We want more pleasure, but we actually abstain more from pain. Take anything you want. We are thinking about becoming averse to pain in extent to become more drawn to the pleasure as a result of being averse to pain, right? So it's not like the opposite. We don't think about pleasure first. We do think about getting away from the pain. And right, so if we get away from the darkness, we go toward the light naturally, right? It's like a magnet, like negative dipole, positive pole. These things draw positive and negative draw, so you can just move away from the one, you get the other. It's the law of contradiction again, explained again in simple terms. So if you think about the whole thing about music is humans are complicated but yet simple in many ways. I think each human, and I explained this, wants to be understood. We don't want to be feeling that we are always in the dark. We want to be de-occulted, to use that word. We want to be deconstructed, de-revolutionized. We want to feel as if we're puzzled to the point where we have our peace. We're set straight, we're done. And I don't think anyone in their right mind, or anyone who's in an individualistic state, who wants to believe that they want to feel that they soar as individuals, can truly soar thinking that they're just losers. They just don't have value. I can't see how that can bring anybody to their knees of repentance, to their own, to themselves or to the world. I can't really see how somebody like that would repent. I can't really see how somebody like that would find hope, would find some sort of meaning in their periphery. I can't see that. I fail to see how somebody like that would. And this to me is why I do think the scatter of inceldom and the scatter of perpetual voluntarily people who are mislabeled and misformed do reach out into these horrible means of existences because they don't get understood by the wider community. So what do you then do? Well, the only power you kind of have is malice in that case. The only possible thing that you should do is an apathetic existence. And an apathetic existence is almost, to some people, in a sense, cruel. It's almost like hidden sociopathy, where somebody would go and lash out at people, punch somebody that's unsolicited, or do something that's completely unprompted or uncalled for in that sense, right? So I do think this is kind of the extremes. And I think somebody who is in control would never reach out in such a point, but you are provoked, right? In some points, you are provoked. This is an important thing, that you are provoked. If you're living in an extreme state, you're going to be provoked. You're going to get angry to the community around you. You're going to get to the point where some people are just, maybe it's a boss at work or people at work who are just continuously, pulling your hair, so to speak, pulling at your shirt or pulling at your freaking tie the whole time. These people just want something of you, and nothing is ever okay with it. And, well, music is one sense that I think I find a lot of hope in my music. I feel sometimes when I just sit down in the world that's kind of beaten me to the pulp, I can just go into my little bubble, my little zen place in my mind, my little house of cards that would never fall down. And I could listen to my iPhone 1,000 miles away and be drawn into a eclipse of a music sphere that is just completely devoid of this earth, this world, this existence. It's not akin to anything else, anybody else, that nobody else knows. A mind of my own. And I do think essentially it's going to be music that's the savior of us. And I do think films do, but I do think I have a problem with movies, because I think that movies can be much more manipulated. And I do think the mass manipulation, and I do think love is the culprit these days for mass manipulation. Everybody is just about, there's always a table for two, right? Never a table for one. I'm actually famous for saying, can I have, or asking restaurant managers or, the staff, may I have a table for one? And there's always a little round table in the corner. You feel like a little kid sitting by himself with a little box of toys, right? But it's weird. There's never really a structure for a table for one. Wherever you're gonna go, they always have to rearrange some sort of. They always have to recalculate the table, and it's almost like never really possible to completely, structure or dine for one person. The restaurant staff are never taught. I've worked at a restaurant to dine for one person. They always dine for two people. You would always see it. They never dine for one. You would have to especially request a diner for one, or a table for one, or a spot for one person to dine at. And I think that if we as single people, if we single people really just stand together in a way, and we can revolt out, we can do revolt our cry to the point where we cry hard enough, loud enough, spheric enough, to the point where we get heard and our echoes get listened to. I do think eventually we'll get far enough, but the ripple effect will soon go to blank, because again, there's going to be a lot of people who are actually against us, to the point where they completely they're ricocheting every effort that we're trying to make. But I don't think there's a lot I can say about it. I think my main ideas was that music today becomes too sexualized, too fantasized, too up in the clouds when it comes to sexuality, kissing, love, lust, affection, and infatuation. And I find it quite revolting. I find it very, very hard to kind of, to really, I find it hard to mingle, or to completely synergize with music like this. I find it difficult to engulf myself in a form of music that is about sex, love, and lust, and rock and roll, because this type of music is not something that I know, that my living style knows. And I think this is something that completely intimidates a lot of people, asexual, incel, perpetual celibate, or anybody who's feeling that there's a sexual robbery in their lives. This is something that I feel there's got to become a music label just for people who feel that to them that sex betrayed them, in a way. I think it's about time that has to start. Where incels or not incels. I'm not talking about the bad incels, but the people who feel that they don't wanna put sex on the table, and the meat stinks now. We wanna get rid of it. We want to give it to the dog, but it's kind of I want to kind of see that there's a revolution in music to the point where sex becomes over dramatized to the point that it's almost cartoonish or animated. It's not anymore something that's being taken seriously to the point where it's completely getting discarded by this music label, by these people. I want to see how sex become something that's being swept under the rug, and other forms of entertainment, other forms of imagery will become prominent. In imagery that's less caustic, less malicious, less provoking, less profound. I want to see those type of imagery about enlightenment, for instance, Buddhist, Christianity, asceticism. It varies from the monastic asceticism, desert fathers. People like these become the prime the prime movers in our music scene. Not women with big breasts or something. I'm really a bit sickening whenever I see there's almost a sexual, and this is kind of another thing as women in music is now there's women in art, women in movies, but everything to me is just now it changed, but in our generation or the new generation, but everything just changes to the point where entertainment can't be entertainment anymore. It has to have something else. It can't just be a beautiful song. It has to have a man and a woman in it. It has to have something else. It has to be a person who's rich and still yet depressed. But he's already intelligent, he already has everything. It can't be just somebody who doesn't have anything. It can't be just a beggar. It can't be just an empty person or an empty vase. I wish music could be there for people who are truly empty as well. People who truly have nobody or nothing. People who truly have no fucking hope in this world. I truly wish that someday music will come just for those people. People who truly feel that they are nobodies, nothings. They're just average good people who never really fitted in, who never really found their peace, who never really found their song in life. And I truly wish that someday we'll be able to get to the point where there will be some sort of corner box or, you know, little space for people who are like this, who just always fell out of pieces in the world, and who can somehow found a way, a reason to live, a reason to be happy for. And I don't really know what more to say about this. I just wanted to kind of air my voice on this because it's really something that's pressing on me. As I listen to new albums, I do notice the influence of the female pseudotype that comes in wherever I am. The high-pitched voices, the over-sexualized dramatization of sex everywhere I go, and I'm really getting pissed off at it to the point of it's arsenic. And I truly hope that it will completely become diminished sometime in the future. And I obviously don't have a lot of hope for this, but I would say that I would have casted a hope or a fortune cookie to just try and change the future, because I know it won't really happen. I know that my wish would go on stale ground and it wouldn't really happen. But yeah, I just wanted to kind of, maybe you guys also have this frustration with music and such, that it's always about this callousness of the solitary life, and it's always about partnering up, some sort of partnering up with another, with a significant other. And it's never okay to make music about just walking alone, and being cheated on to the point where you just completely want to cut away from the world. It's never a complete solitary pursuit. The music and pop scene should always be about love. And it would be nice if pop music would actually be about saying F you to love. And I mean F you by, fuck you, basically, spelled out. But I wish that music would just take that turn, where our life would actually synergize with the way that the world goes. We don't want to have more kids. We don't want to create more pain. I wish that the world would become to the point where it would have a less myopic view on actual events. I mean, love can only begin to think about bringing children into this world. Sex main active, or the primordial soup of sex is to bring something else, another being into this existence. This is actually the end result of sex. Like, why expand on this notion? Why do we try and provoke the notion of repeated sexual innuendo? Why don't we try and stop it. We can see what birth does. We try and stop birth, right? This is what we're trying to do. As an anti-natalist, I try and get rid of potential creation of suffering. That is what I'm against. I'm against creating children personally. And I'm not saying you should be ultimately an anti-natalist, but to me it's just a natural philosophy that came, and I truly wish that some music would choose, and I would think that the metal music is the only genre of music that would actually tend to this, because it's currently doing this. Some metal, and I talk about the extreme metal genres are actually the only ones actually telling the truth about the world and suffering and such, albeit being gory, and I know it's bloody gory and completely extreme, and it's completely sometimes acidic to listen to, but I feel it's the only ones with some truth in it. And it's sad that an extreme genre of music has truth to it. And pop music, the actual ones, classical music, pop music, all these other forms of music. Well, classical music, no words, no prejudices, that's okay, right? And I can still find hope in that. But sometimes you just gotta have a bit of spice to enjoy the sauce. And that comes with metal music. And I find it's sad that metal music with words can actually try and motivate a no-sex foundation. Whereas basic music, yeah, well, the rhythm is quite quiet and stuff, but it never actually motivates the idea of solitary, of being solitaire, of being alone, of being just reminiscing in your own sense, your own self, your own mind. It never truly try and bump that up. It always says, okay, fair enough, love you and another person. You know, it throws the baby out of the bathwater, because what about the people who can find it? What about those of us who are just, the castaways in the world? It undermines us. What about us who aren't that intelligent? Why use big words? And again, then we go back to rap. Some rap forms are actually pretty nice, because I've listened to some rap forms and I thought the words and the way that these people think are pretty bright. As a metal music listener and lover, I kind of gravitate to some forms of rap now, because I'm like, not all forms of rap are this like typical Nigeria rap where it's just all about black people in the neighborhood trying to get sex and stuff. Some of it's actually pretty deep stuff, It's not just all about it. Some of it's the words can be quite catching, phrasing, and very much to the bone. So rap might also actually have, rap can also be pretty, you get a bit of everything in rap, right? But some forms of rap or hip-hop can be very solitary, very ascetic, can be very monastic, very monkish. And I do also see this, but I do think it's essentially for us loanabouts, the music that we're going to end up listening to are probably some small segment, mostly metal, mostly very extreme metal, death metal, in extreme metal and thrash metal. That's kind of the scenes that you're looking at when you want music that completely alienates the form of sex to the point where it's laughable, and this is kind of what you're looking at. And then, well, as for the small parts of other music, maybe music about being cheated on is the only other hope that you have. That's pop music, right? You don't really want to be remembered about the gluttonous state of sex. So that's not going to help you. You want to completely cut it away. You want to say that it's bad, it's boo, it's taboo. And that's what metal would do for you. Metal would laugh at sex. Metal would tell you it's ridiculous. So, okay guys, it's pretty late. My mind is again shutting down, so I probably have to say goodbye. So thank you so much for listening to this massive vlog, whatever you want to call it. And I appreciate your input into this. Tell me about the frustrations that you have with music, with metal music, with normal music, rap music, or whatever. And maybe you're also the same as I am, is you find this utter frustration with the world. It's such that it over glamorizes sex, it over dramatizes sex to the point where you feel guilty for not having it, and you feel completely as if you're not really belonging. You can't really see a square in a matchbox anymore for yourself, and it becomes just too much sometimes, because you feel that the world is meant for partners, and you're not one of them. You're not partnered up. You're a pot without a lid, and I've been a part of without a lid my whole life, and it's getting to the point where I want a space in this world that's meant for people with pots without lids. And I'm sick of going to places where Everything requires another lid. Everything requires another partner. Partner this, partner here. The world doesn't really want me. And I don't see why I need to live longer in a world that doesn't really want me. I want to go to a place that does want me, whether it's in the middle of the ocean or wherever else. But I'm getting sick of the world as it is because it's not inviting to people who are different. It just never will be. We get taught as kids that, be considerate against the kid with a wheelchair, the kid who diabetes, sugar sickness, everything. Be considerate, be polite to wherever you are. But we're never like that. It's just mimics. All these things are just cliches and memes. It's just, nobody's really following this stuff. Everybody's just as bad as they were. You go to church, Sunday school. Oh, pastor just preached about being nice. What's the next thing you see? Bullies at the church. Another guy trying to pick on you. Sunday school. Just taught about niceness, being like Jesus and everything, right? Everything is just hypocrisy, and everything is just about how the world wants it to be, how everyone else should be. What about us who are different? It's always the question I have, and I don't have an answer to this. I don't know how we can find a small sphere, music, books, that's all about attaining a better self rather than attaining a self with someone else, attaining another, attaining, trying to gravitate. It's not about being a monopole, it's about being a dipole. Life wants you to be a, almost like a dipole, where you got to have both sides. You cannot completely be full without the other half. Right? There's also the term the other half, which is ridiculous because you don't have a half. You're just yourself. And I want to use every bit of myself to kind of bring awareness to the fact that we have to linguistically change our word use. There is no such thing as another half. There's just you. There's just you, yourself and I. You, me, myself, and I. You, yourself, and yourself, right? It's you. There's no other half. The other person is there, yeah, but there's no other half. That's linguistically incoherent, actually. And I think the way to attack the sexual monster is with logic, with understanding of linguistic logic punnery, understanding how to find the source of the problem, and to the point where we can deconstructize or deconstruct this enormous megalith of the sexual force that's working against us solitaires. And I want to kind of bring an awareness to this channel. And I'm sorry if you guys get bored with this, but I have a passion to kind of do this because I feel it's so needed that we bring an awareness and an embryo for men like us. Men get violent because there's no embryo for us. There's no embryo, there's no voice for people like us, really. We think there are, but there isn't really. We need to create this source. We need to create a network or music or a label that's just so for people who live in this bubble, for people who are suffered, who can't really function in the outer world, who need music and books and sources and information and webbery that's just there for people like us, that aren't really meant. The other people, they can follow the mainstream shit. That's fine. But I want to kind of create something that's just meant for people like us who feel in a specific way, who are in a specific habitat of existence. It's not like the outside world. In the outside world, what it may be, but the thing is, whether it is that you feel destroyed, whether it's that you feel less intellectual, whatever, you're just somebody who's very mechanical, but you live in a world that's I feel over-intellectualization is, to me, one of the massive culprits to this world. Is, as a man, having to strive and struggle with an over-intellectualizing world, a world that's cognitively so advanced. I feel this is one of these in factors that I kind of want to bring to the table. Is one of the filters that I want to kind of bring in is for people who feel, who have ADHD, who feel sometimes that things are getting too much. They can't always remember what's being told to them at work. They can't always remember or recall information on the spot. That's kind of another X factor I want to bring in to this melting pot of filters, because the other things are obviously the women and sexual stuff, but I think there's a couple of things I want to kind of bring in kind of create like web filters to say men who feel or people who feel this way. Here's the information for you that you can feed from. And it would be kind of nice, and it means that you'll be filtered from that. Like, you'll be protected from the outside forces. It's okay if you, let's say, pick sexual stuff as a filter, you'd only get that. But let's say you don't want to see sexual music. You don't want to see books about sex or about partners. There should be a filter, applied to that specific category, such that you can be protected from stuff that would, you know, uh, stuff that would infest your mind with the information you don't want it to be infested with. Okay, guys, I would need to shut down. I'm getting very, very tired.